Hello, I'm Liz Lumley of Finextra, and today I'm speaking to David Yates of VocaLink, and we're talking prior to Money 2020 in Las Vegas, which is the big payments money show that's now in its second year. And around some of the themes at Money 2020, there's a lot of talk now about FinTech centers and London and specifically the UK being sort of the FinTech capital of the world, if not the universe, which I think a lot of people in this region are hoping is very true. So, what do people mean really when they talk about FinTech? What are some of the issues that are affecting this industry?
Well, FinTech, I think, is about the use of technology to disrupt existing business models within financial services. So more than just plain technology, which enables many transaction types, but really getting into the disruption of the business model that the incumbents currently have. And in fact, if you look across the fintech sector within that, probably the biggest part of it is payments. So of total fintech, if you like, within the UK, about £20 billion gets spent per annum, but about 10 billion of that, so half of it, is within payments.
Yeah, I think payments is like the gateway into all this financial innovation universe, it seems like.
I think it is because if you think about it, every time there's a payment, there's also either a business event or a personal event that was connected to it. And that's why payments are so important, because there's always an underlying transaction. And a large part of what payments innovation is about is getting to that underlying data and being able to monetize it, and to take what has been a fairly static business model where payments followed the financial event and making the two of them happen at the same time. So really getting payments to integrate correctly within e-commerce flows.
So it's interesting that you talked about payments. I mean, the current payments rails or infrastructure are, almost over 30 years old. So, what are some of the opportunities for new entrants in this market? And, what do you think are some of the key issues?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think that in the area of financial innovation in payments, there is something of an issue when you talk about the 30 and 40-year-old payment infrastructures, because when they were originally designed, nobody had thought about digital commerce. And so there are really two models that people can pursue. One is to build innovation on the existing and incumbent models, and the other one is to generate brand new models that exist on their own as really new technology on which to power innovation. So many times when you look at innovation within payments, people struggle to innovate because the only way to deliver payments to the consumer and to the business is across quite old infrastructures, which themselves rely on multiple batch processes, may take many days. And probably 30 years ago, the cards business came up with a great innovation, which was to separate instant authorization from eventual settlement. But of course that leads to quite slow payments, and those people that innovate upon that infrastructure have really ended up having to find solutions that mask the underlying oldness of the technology, if you like. So there's that route, and the other route is to do something which is absolutely brand new and to really deliver a service that is appropriate and good for the digital age.
So you mentioned that some of these new entrants are, built on top of aging payments infrastructure that kind of mask a lot of these back-end problems. But, how can traditional ACHs really complement some of these new digital entrants then?
Well, I think traditional ACHs many of them are thinking about modernizing their infrastructure. There are a number of challenges that the traditional ACH needs to deal with. One of them is moving towards real-time payments. Another of them is making sure that when a payment is made, that it can carry enough data to be able to satisfy the data requirements of modern commerce and modern government. And then the final really important one is about authentication and making sure that in an age where people aren't standing face to face with each other and want to transact across an e-commerce platform, that you're able to correctly identify people and reduce fraud. So what we're seeing at VocaLink is an immense amount of interest from ACHs across the world who are thinking about modernizing across all of those points. So bringing real-time payments, the ability to manage authentication in a good way for the digital age, and the ability to transport large amounts of data to enable commerce to really flow. So assuming that an ACH is able to deliver real-time payments with big data and to manage that authentication process well, then what you have to ask is, how much can the remaining infrastructure that was built on the back of these ACH structures really be used going forward? If I look at the cards world, what they did in innovation, as I said, was to simplify authorization, and they could put up with delayed settlement. When a system turns up that can settle instantly and carry large volumes of data, then the question or the challenge for the card industry is, where does it develop its own infrastructure to from here? And if cards are thinking about redeveloping and simplifying things in such a way that they can deliver real-time payments, correctly authenticated, simply, and also carry large volumes of data, then what happens to all of the other innovations that got built on top of card? Pretty much every innovation that's been built on top of the traditional layer cake, ACH, card system, and then sort of the challenger payment propositions will all need to rethink what it is they're doing, because the ACH natively should be able to perform many of those functions.
Yeah, no, I think cards are very much looking into this issue and almost looking at where they're going to go past their demise in a strange way, past the plastic.
Yes, I mean, clearly plastic has reached its maturity, I think, and the issue for the card systems is that many of the things that they've done to innovate from card for the digital age have actually been sticky tape on the problem. So the underlying ways in which you authenticate a card transaction really are there to try to drive security in the digital age. Wind that back and they have to reinvent themselves in a more fundamental way, and so will the rest of the industry.
So you talked about this aging payments platforms and infrastructure that the banking and the commerce world sort of relies on. There are a lot of people today talking about Bitcoin and the blockchain and the public ledger. Wouldn't using something like the blockchain solve and simplify a lot of the problems that you've been talking about?
Well, it's a fascinatingly interesting technology. And in theory, ignoring the currency itself and whether it's Bitcoin or some other digital currency, the idea that you would hold, if you like, one central record of all payments movements rather than distributing that through a range of different bank general ledgers, in theory, that should have a lot of attraction. It's a really revolutionary idea. I think it will take a long time to be proven. And I suspect that regulators would have concerns about the concentration of risk into a central place and the change, if you like, of the function that each of their regulated banks and entities are currently required to perform. So it moves the regulatory landscape to a point at which I think regulators are not ready to go. But in theory, it's a great idea, and I'm fascinated to see how it plays out in reality.
20, 30 years from now, maybe.
20, 30 years maybe, yeah.
Excellent. David, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Liz.